Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel, The Bookworm. My name is Guy Estes, and I am The Bookworm, also author of the Sisters of the Storm fantasy series, Sword and Sorcery, as well as author of the Clanana Marigna series, Magical Realism, Paranormal Adventures of Honor McGregor, Pagan PI. So this is the first installment on that series. I am presently working on the second installment. These are just the first three installments of the Sisters of the Storm series. There are 6 altogether, and I am presently working on the 7th. So, today's topic, I thought, just for fun, have a little rant session, I guess, a little bitch session about certain things that pop up in fantasy movies and stories that just kind of bug me. It's just some of my little pet peeves. So just my top 7 pet peeves, I guess, in fantasy movies. So, starting with number 7, this is one, again, kind of a minor one. It's not something that bugs me a heck of a lot. It's just something I tend to notice. And this is in movies that involve time travel, where they travel back to the Middle Ages, medieval period, or what have you, which, I mean, that right there encompasses a few centuries. But traveling back to the Middle Ages, and there's no language barrier, which bugs me because there'd be a language barrier. You go back to, say, 14th century England and try to converse with a peasant. The English language has changed enough between then and now that you're probably not, you're not going to be able to communicate with each other. And that's going to get even worse if you try to talk to a noble, because they're speaking French at the time. Yes, I know it's England, but they were speaking French at the time. And again, like English language, it has changed a lot in those times. The French that was spoken then, not the same as the French that's spoken now. In fact, I'm not sure that they even know what the proper pronunciation is on a lot of those words. So yeah, there would be a definite language barrier, not just thee and thou and ye, and throwing in the occasional forsooth and verily, I believe we've got it, by Jove. No, it would be more complicated than that. Now again, some of that also depends on the story. A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, that was obviously meant to be lighthearted fare, and of course movies that are based on that story, again, meant to be more lighthearted, not taken too seriously. Army of Darkness, again, it's not meant to be taken that seriously, things like that. So again, kind of depending on the movie. Whereas if this is meant to be a serious tale, then yeah, that can be an issue. Pet peeve number 6 that I see in these movies, and again, I tend to see this in these things in movies more often than books. Arrows instantly killing the enemy that they shoot with it, whether it's human, orc, goblin, whatever, they get shot and drop dead instantly. Now, an instant kill with an arrow, that's not a physical impossibility. It could happen. It's just very, very unlikely. Arrows tend to kill through blood loss, which can take a surprisingly long amount of time to kill. Studies have shown that even people taking a gunshot wound directly through the heart, if their circulatory system's got enough oxygen in it, they can keep going for a good 20-30 seconds. And to kind of put that in perspective, that's about how long the gunfight at the OK Corral lasted. So a lot can happen in those few seconds. So again, arrows killing through blood loss, it's probably going to take a little while, especially arrows used on the battlefield, where they're not using those big, V-shaped broadheads that were meant for hunting. On the battlefield, they needed something that could pierce armor, so the arrowheads tended to be a lot narrower, so the wound channel was smaller and could take a long time to produce death. So yeah, somebody shot with an arrow could drop dead instantly. They probably won't. So my pet peeve in the movies is it happens with much greater frequency than it normally would. Pet peeve number 5 on this list: bows are not melee weapons. Bows are missile weapons, distance weapons. The whole advantage, the whole purpose is to be able to hit your opponent from a long distance off. They're not meant for the melee, for up close, hand-to-hand combat type things. But you see that in the movies a lot. Again, because in the movies, people tend to people shot with arrows tend to drop dead instantly, and of course, that's not going to happen, or again, very unlikely to happen in real life. Now, you can get a surprising rate of shots out of a bow. I have seen videos of people doing it, but a couple of crucial differences. One of them is they're not going to full draw length. They're drawn just far back enough to loose that arrow and pierce a standard archery target. So you don't have to go to full length to do that. And also, they're using bows with much lighter draw weights than what would have been used in war. So with bows used on the battlefield, no, that's not going to be an option. Another thing I'll see is they'll use the bow like a quarterstaff and, whack the enemy, bash the enemy with it. Yeah, you do that, you're probably going to damage your bow more than you will your opponent. So bows are not melee weapons. Pet peeve number 5, I think. Wait, that was 7, 6, 5. Nope, we're down to pet peeve number 4. Lost track. Holding the bow at full draw. So again, they'll do this in movies to threaten the opponent. Sort of like cocking a gun. You cock the gun and point it at the other guy. They'll hold the bow at full draw and threaten the enemy. It would give me great pleasure to shoot you. Yeah, okay, that kind of thing. Okay, and again, no, not going to be able to do that. Bows that were meant for the battlefield had very heavy draw weights. The long bows that were recovered from the wreck of the ship Mary Rose, which is one of Henry VIII's ships, they analyzed them and were able to estimate draw weights from them. The lightest draw weight I think one of those had was something like 80 pounds. War bows draw weights typically were 100 pounds or more. The composite bows the Mongols used, they had draw weights going up to 160 pounds. English longbows weren't much lighter than that, still well over 100 pounds, 120, 140 pounds, whatever. Again, very heavy draw weights that even a trained archer going to full draw is only going to be able to hold back there for a few seconds before releasing, because it still takes muscular effort, strength to hold these things at that full draw. So being able to hold it back there and calmly threaten your opponent, yeah, no. You're not going to be able to do that. The draw weight was too heavy for that. Next little pet peeve on my list, giving archers the order to fire. I know I'm being very pedantic on this, but it's just something that rubs me wrong. You don't fire a bow. You loose, you release, you shoot, but you do not fire. Nowhere in the process of using a bow or a crossbow is fire produced. With guns that happens, which is why they're called firearms. Bows and crossbows, no. Now sometimes they get it right. There was a scene in Braveheart where they ordered the archers to loose. One of the few things that movie got right, actually, and even in Lord of the Rings at the Two Towers, the Battle of Helm's Deep, Aragorn gives the elven archers the order to release arrows, and I remember seeing that thinking, yeah, that's what they would have ordered, and then right after that, the Rohirrim, they give their archers the order to fire, and then in later movies, orcs are fire, open fire, fire at will. They're giving these orchers to art, which is, no, that's not what you would say. You would, again, loose or release or shoot. And again, I know I'm being pedantic, but it just bugs me. It's just one of those little things that irks me. You do not fire a bow. Pet peeve number 6, cutting through plate armor. You see this a lot, again, in the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit movies, and I know I'm picking on them. Don't get me wrong, I love those movies. I am presently in the process of watching the extended version of the Lord of the Rings movies, and I love them. They're great movies. They're not perfect, though. They do commit a few sins. And this is one of them, and this happens throughout both of those movies, but the ones where it really stands out, I think, is in The Hobbit and Battle of the Five Armies, where the elves are going after the orcs and they're just cutting down the orcs, and the elvish swords are all curved. So curved blade swords, those are meant to slice and slash. They're cutting weapons. Now, yes, you can stab, you can thrust with them, but they're primarily meant to cut, to slice and slash. You are not going to cut through metal plate armor. Now, in fantasy and in sci-fi, you can have a couple of exceptions to that. A magic sword, an enchanted sword. Okay, so it's magic. So yes, it can do things a sword normally couldn't do. I make frequent use of that in my Sisters of the Storm series, where my protagonists tend to use enchanted weapons. And yes, they can cut through armor and other things. So yeah, sci-fi, you can go high-tech, lightsabers. So again, those can cut through pretty much anything. So yeah, exceptions to that in the genre, but again, there's no indication the elves are using magic weapons. High quality weapons, yeah, but magic weapon, yeah. No. And in our world, you'll see this with hype-around Japanese swords. The katana slicing through machine gun barrels is the old urban legend. Nowadays, you'll get people going so far as to say they'll slice through engine blocks. And yet, no, they're not going to come close to doing either one of them. Yes, these are very well-crafted swords and good steel, but it has its limits. No, it's not going to do that. If they could do that, why would the samurai have bothered wearing that expensive and elaborate armor? And same things in the movies. If swords can just slice through armor, why bother wearing it? So no, you're not going to slice through plate armor, and that's metal armor. Even leather armor, damn difficult to cut through. Harder than most people think. I mean, you say leather nowadays, we tend to think suede or leather jackets people wear, but no, leather armor, and I got an example right here that you can use. This is what they call a pauldron, meant for protecting the shoulders. So leather armor here, and I'll try to get it up close. You can see that it's actually pretty thick, fairly stiff. It's got some flex to it, some bend, but not a heck of a lot. It's got some rigidity to it, and I have sliced this thing with blades and whacked a few of them, and then no, it won't cut through. Now it could, if you were to really hit hard and slice through. Yeah, some of my swords might make it through, but my point is, it is far more difficult to cut through that than you think. And in fact, I did see a video of a guy with leather armor that he had boiled in wax, and that stood up. It looked like it was standing up almost as well as metal plate was, trying to cut through it, and even thrusting through it. He was trying to stab through it, and that point would just skim off of there. So even leather armor, much more resilient than people think. Trying to slice through steel plate or iron plate, forget it. Short of using a magic or high-tech weapon, no, that's not gonna happen. And then down to my number one pet peeve of these that I list, the one that tends to bug me the most. Why does it bug me the most? I don't know, it just does. But iron or steel sword blades are not cast. They are forged, not cast. You see this in a bunch of movies. It probably got its start with the original Conan the Barbarian with Schwarzenegger, and at the opening scene in that movie, his father making a sword, and the molten metal flows into the mold, and you've got the flames, and you've got that awesome musical score by Basil Polidorus. An iconic scene, a really, really cool scene, and that's what I think that kind of established the trend. Others do it. The Conan remake with Jason Momoa, they kind of did the same thing, just music not as good, but hey, you can't really fill Basil Polidorus' boots when it comes to that. Lord of the Rings, the Isengard, the armories for making the weapons for the Uruk-hai, they had those multiple molds with the molten iron in it, and that's no. Bronze swords, yes, those were cast. Iron and steel, you start out with an iron or a steel billet or bar or whatever, you heat that up and you hammer this thing into shape. You don't cast an iron blade. For one thing, the heat needed to do it consumes a tremendous amount of fuel. And then once it's cast, well, I mean, there's really no point doing it. You don't want to cast it and then let it cool. Cast iron would be a really crappy choice for a sword blade. It's going to be too heavy and it's going to be too hard. It's going to be very brittle. And again, it's going to be god-awful heavy. If you ever held something made of cast iron, yeah, it's got quite a bit of weight to it. They cast them, and then later scenes they showed them heating them and hammering them. Well, again, you have to do that anyway. You just start out with the steel billet and go from there. There's no point in wasting fuel to heat it up, get it hot enough to melt it and pour it in the, there's no point in doing that. A lot of wasted steps and wasted resources in there to do that. So no, iron and steel blades, not cast, they are forged. So, my top 7 pet peeves with fantasy movies and story. And again, I see those things in movies much more often than I see them in books. And I could go on and on about any of those. I'm trying to stay brief here. And I know it's silly, it's stupid. Just sit back and enjoy the movie. And for the most part, I do. But every once in a while, yeah, I'll notice them. Whether or not it'll bother me depends on the quality of the movie. So again, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, those are good movies. I enjoy them. So I'll notice those things, but I can forgive them. Whereas in something much less quality, take, for example, your typical 1980s sword and sorcery movies, which tended to be much lower quality for the most part. Not all of them, but for the most part. I'm going to be far less forgiving on those critiques there. So, that's my top 7 pet peeves with these things. What are yours? Let me know in the comments section. Hit like and subscribe as well. Also, I will provide links in the comments section to my Sisters of the Storm series, as well as my Clan Morigna Magical Realism Pagan PI series. Can go to, browse them, see if any of them would be something you'd like. Get the, purchase them. The Sisters of the Storm series, well, in fact, both of them, I'm structuring them that, but the Sisters of the Storm has more installments. I structure them so that you do not have to read them in order. That's, again, one of my pet peeves as a reader, a consumer of literature. I get this book. Oh, yeah, I read the blurb. This sounds really, really cool. I like this. Wait a minute, number 5. I got to read these other 4 to know what's going on in this one. So I try to avoid that. I try to structure my series so that you don't have to do that. You can read them in any order, although I will tell you the first installment, Triad, is free on Amazon. Free Kindle. Paperback is, print-on-demand paperbacks are also available, and in that, those cost. But the Kindle for Triad is free. The others, $2.99 Kindle, paperback, $20. But check them out. Sounds like something you'd like. By all means, purchase and read. If you have read some of my books, you could do me a huge, huge favor. Go to Amazon and leave a review. And it doesn't have to be anything huge. This incisive, literary, analytical piece, a few lines are sufficient. Reviews are a huge marketing tool for us indie authors. So more reviews we can get, the better for marketing purposes. Also, positive reviews let me know I'm doing something right. You have no idea the rush I get off of reading a positive review of my books, because otherwise I'm pretty much operating in a vacuum here, thinking I'm doing this right, hoping I'm doing this right, and I get a positive review telling me I'm doing it right. That feels terrific. A negative review lets me know what I'm doing wrong, so I can fix it. So if I get the same critique popping up in reviews, okay, there's something here that I need to address. So there's that as well. So yeah, go to Amazon, leave a review, hit like and subscribe here. Leave a comment. Let me know what some of your pet peeves are in the genre, and I will catch you all later. Thank you for watching.